if you're not careful, the way that you write your goals can prevent you from being able to do them. It's kind of like giving yourself a handicap and making it harder for yourself. So what you want to do is follow these steps so that you can check off whether or not your goal is going to work. And that's the whole goal of this podcast, is to help you figure out where you're trying to go in life and help you get there, because life is too short to live it by accident.
Welcome to the Intentional podcast. We help you define what it means to be intentional and give you tools to make it happen.
We want you to happen to your life instead of letting life happen to you.
The Intentional podcast exists to help you define success and then reach that by growing personally, living intentionally, and ultimately defining your legacy.
All right, today we are talking about smarter goals and why they're important and what is a smarter goal. A smarter goal is specific, measurable, actionable, risky, time-keyed, exciting, and relevant. And if your goals aren't matching these criteria, it may be a bad goal. You may not be setting yourself up for success. A lot of times a task or a goal is doomed to fail before it's even tried because of how it's written. Like, you can probably think of some examples, Scott, but I'm thinking of the person that tries to lose weight at New Year's, and that's what they write as their goal is, I want to lose weight, and that's as far as it goes. So they don't know when they've accomplished their goal, and they don't know what they need to do to work towards that. Can you think of some other examples of goals that just did not work?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think for me, most of my goals that have not ended up panning out are because, if I'm not specific enough with it, so like different things, like you said, weight loss or getting in good shape, I guess is one, or like eating healthy or anything like that, where it's just like a super nebulous thing. And then it's very discouraging because you don't know, like you said, when you've done it, you don't know exactly. It's just kind of like clean your room even can be one of those like, I needed to do it. But, if it's not broken down or not specific, like, okay, I need to do this and this, then it's really hard to even know if you've accomplished it or, yeah. So I think anything in any area of life, you can have a goal that's just, you need to do it. But if you just say, I got to run a marathon, I got to be in shape to run a marathon. It's like,
but when and which one and what are you going to do to train for it? So
exactly.
Specific, we kind of talked about that already. Measurable, that's very similar, same lines. If you're not able to measure the goal, so let's say you want to, for example, me, in my current workplace, I want to build relationships with people that aren't in my normal day-to-day circle of friends. And so that's my intention. I want to build relationships with people. But how do I do that? I made a goal to spend 1 minute chatting with someone that's outside of my normal circle every day. I don't always do that. I rarely actually do it, but it's an example of a goal that is measurable because I can measure whether or not I talk to someone for 1 minute that I didn't normally talk to. So a lot of times when I'm coaching people, they have this idea of what they're looking for or like what they're wanting to move towards, but they don't actually have a measurable step they can take, responsibility to make sure happens. It's just kind of like, I want to do that direction of things. Any thoughts on that point? Measurable.
Yeah, I feel like the specific and measurable really tie together because if it's not specific, well, first of all, being specific makes it motivational because you know what you want, and then measurable also, it's just you have the satisfaction of knowing when it's complete. So those kind of like tie in really well together. But yeah, I think the measurable is extremely important just because, like you said, that it makes it seem doable. It makes it feel like you can accomplish that. When you have 1 minute to do that, it's like, oh, I can do that.
The next point on the acronym is A, and it is actionable. So you got to make sure that it's something you have control over. So a bad example of this would be if you go to, let's say you're going home for the holidays, you're with your family, and you want there to be a relationally harmonious time. You want everybody to get along. You can't control that. So you need to make sure that it's something that you have control over, something that is something you can take action on. That's one example. You think of any other examples on that? I think I have another one coming.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you got that one, go with it. Yeah.
Okay. I think another way that you can look at this actionable sort of thing is that it's something that you need to take responsibility to go do. So taking ownership of it and making sure that you're having agency and that it's something that is something you can do something about. I think I've already said that enough. So
Yeah. Well, I'm with you on that. And then just, it's important not to have it be like, saying like, I want to be this, or I want this to happen. Like, you can't really happen something, and you can't just be something.
Yes.
And so it's very important to have actionable, like a verb that you can do. So if the long-term goal is, I want to run a marathon, well, what does that entail for you? What is the action you're going to take, maybe on a daily basis or however many times a week, but that action. So I will run a mile or run 2 miles every single day. That action, I will run, like whatever. That just really helps you know the step you need to take, rather than just saying like, I want to be a marathon runner.
Yes, that's true. I forgot about that contrast of be versus do. The next letter in the acronym is risky. And Michael Hyatt changed this from what it used to be to risky. I think it was before it was realistic, but realistic goals are lame.
Boring.
You want it to be sort of scary. You want it to give you a little bit of pause and then maybe dial it back just a little bit. But the reason that you want it to be risky is, let's say you're doing sales and you are hitting these numbers. You're hitting X numbers. If you make a goal to keep on hitting those numbers, that's not a good goal, because there's nothing for you to do to change it to be better. You're to do a better job. I just said be better. You're just saying no, don't do that. Don't try to just be better. Talk about what being better looks like. Talk about the action steps that it takes to be the person you want to be. Like, what would that person do, and then do those things. But so your sales, and you're trying to boost your numbers. If you make a goal that's just a little bit above your last goal, you're not really going to try hard. You're just going to basically copy and paste, maybe work a little bit harder. And I was listening to the Focus on this podcast today, and one of the things they were saying it's an older episode, they were saying that a lot of people have this habit of just trying a little bit more. They'll just work a little bit harder. And so they make a little incremental goal, and they'll just work a little bit harder and a little bit harder and a little bit harder. And before you know it, they're working 70, 80-hour weeks, and their life is not in good balance, and they're just trashed because all they know of goals is to add a little bit more effort. When you make a risky goal, it forces you to be ingenuitive. It forces you to think outside the box, to create, to try harder, to come up with something that's smarter, not just putting more energy and oomph into it, because you only have so much oomph. And so I want to see you be smart about how you use your energy and how you spend your life, because you're only given so much of it. Do you have anything you want to share on the risky point?
Well, mainly just that it helps it also to be motivational also, because if you just have something that's, like you said, if it's like a tiny bit better, you're like, maybe I'll just do what I've been doing, and then like maybe a little bit more, and then, well, you realize you don't have to put much effort into it. You're not gonna have to think about it a lot. But if it is risky enough where you're like, it's not like gonna give you anxiety all the time, but you're like, oh man, I gotta do that thing. If it's risky, like running a marathon, in a sense, it's risky depending on where you're starting from. It's like, oh man, that's a lot that's going to go into getting into shape to do that. That's a lot of running. Yeah, that's a lot of miles. So it's kind of risky in a sense that, like, okay, am I going to be able to, if you have a marathon coming up in like 3 months and you're like, oh man, whatever. So that that there's a chance you could fail, and it makes you want to try harder to succeed. So I think it just also helps with the motivational aspect.
Yes, and that is the second to last point, is exciting. It needs to be something that is something you can get into, but
yes,
we're getting ahead of ourselves. The next letter in the acronym is T for time keyed, And that basically means you need to have a deadline. That means you need to know what it looks like for it to be done. I want to draw a distinction real quick between goals that are achievement goals, so you do the thing and you check it off, or habit goals. So if you want to, so I'll make an example here. Doing things would be run a marathon. Specifically, this marathon at this time, I'm going to run it with this buddy and whatever. It's very much a date on the calendar, a checked off the box. And then a habit goal is something like, I want to wake up at the same time every day. And when I have done that 80% of the time for 2 weeks straight, I'll know that I've achieved that, and it's kind of installed into my life. So that's a habit goal. But time key basically needs to be, you need to know when you're done. Any thoughts on that? Should we move on?
That's perfect.
Cool. Exciting. Kind of what you're already saying. It needs to be something that you can get into, something that you want. Do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I just think I'm extremely purpose driven, so I can't really do anything that I'm not almost immediately excited about. And so I think that's a really big one for me. Probably the biggest one. If I were to say, like, I don't even know what's something really boring to me. Okay, I do hate running. Okay, it's beneficial to me. I know I need to do it, so I do it. But something like running a marathon would be, unless I was doing it with other people, because I'm also very relationally oriented. But if I was just like, I'm going to go alone, run a marathon, and it's happening in 2 months, it's like, oh my goodness, I couldn't get into it. And so every single day, whatever goals, I would set on.
You'd just be dreading it.
Yeah, every single time. I would have to like, okay, I'm going to go out and run. I don't like the build up, and I don't like the payoff at the end, really. I mean, it's kind of cool. Like, I ran a marathon, nice. But so yeah, for me, exciting. Make it something that you care about, and something that you will care about for more than a tiny bit, and that you'll care about even through a little bit of resistance.
We will probably dedicate an entire podcast episode to you do what you want.
Ooh.
It's something I got from The Power of Habit, and it basically means that if you say that you want something, let's say you write down a goal and you're like, this is what I want, and then you look at your actions and they're not lining up with it, your actions are a better indicator of what you want than what you say you want. If you're really wanting to spend time with your family when they're in town, but you have this report due, but spending time with your family is more important to you than doing a really banger job on the report, then if I'm coaching you, I'm going to say, well, if this is your priority, then make that your goal. Make that written down your priority. Don't make this your goal and then do it and completely lose out on what actually matters to you. And don't do what actually matters to you and then feel horrible because you didn't meet your goal, which was a bad goal because it wasn't what you were most importantly focused on, what you most cared about.
Right. Yeah, that's really good.
Okay. So look forward to that podcast where we're going to talk about the whole psychology of that. I love that book. The Power of Habit taught me to think about thinking, to observe myself thinking. It was really cool. The next thing is relevant. And that basically means that it needs to be something that works in your life right now. So I'm not, but let's just say I was a pregnant woman. It wouldn't be relevant in my life to try to work on running a marathon unless you're that crazy woman who did that. But like, respect. But basically, is it something that matters right now? Is it something that you can do? Is it something that is relevant?
Right. I think that's really important to think about too, that the relevant is, it's mostly right now. Like, because you can have a goal that's a great goal for a different time of life, or if you had more time on your hands. But yeah, like if you have young kids and you have a big project at work or whatever, it's not going to be smart for you to just start piling on some sort of like fitness goals. It's just, even though those are good goals and can meet all the things, if it's just not relevant for right then. And so I think that it's just an important one. It kind of puts a rein on what you should really be doing. But then you'll also have more success in your goals, because if you do goals that are relevant for where you're at in life, you're much more likely to actually succeed in completing them, rather than, if you're just going to be like, I'm going to do, I've had a couple people that I've worked with that were like that. Like, I'm going to make, $100,000 by the end of the year. And I'm like, it's June. You don't have a job, and like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And they're like, dude, and great goals, great ideas. Not bad ambition, but it's just like, you're not going to do any of those things because it's just not relevant for where you're at.
Okay, I feel like this whole thing has been practical application. So let's go to the recap.
Okay.
So I'm going to read over the different letters in the acronym and what they stand for. So if you're listening to this and you would want to write that down, I would recommend that. I'm going to read it off so you can write this down. Specific, measurable, actionable, risky, time-keyed, exciting, and relevant. I wrote that down on a sticky note and put it next to the place in my full focus planner where I wrote goals. And it was a good reminder for me to double check that. And I would move it to the next planner every time I used it because I still needed to. I started out writing it in the book, but then I'm like, okay, this is taking too long to keep on rewriting. So I can put on a sticky note so I can paste it to the next one every time.
That's awesome.
Anyways, that's something that was super helpful for me to know. Is this goal actually going to work, going to help me move towards where I'm trying to go in life? And that's the whole goal of this podcast, is to help you figure out where you're trying to go in life and help you get there, because life is too short to live it by accident. If you're not careful, the way that you write your goals can prevent you from being able to do them. It's kind of like giving yourself a handicap and making it harder for yourself. So what you want to do is follow these steps so that you can check off whether or not your goal is going to work.
When there's things in life that you need to get done, most people will make a goal and just be like, okay, I want to do this big vague thing. But in reality, that's really not going to work very well. I think you can start big and vague and ethereal, be like, I want to lose weight. That's fine. But the smarter goal system is really going to help you narrow that down, boil that down to the most actionable and useful little small habit goals or something like that. So when you take, I want to lose weight, and you think, is that specific? No. Okay. I want to lose 10 pounds. Boom. That's specific. Measurable. Well, that's also, I guess, measurable because 10 pounds. Actionable. All right. Well, how can I make that happen? All right. I'm going to, go for a walk every day for 20 minutes. Good. And you just go down the list and you just make it more and more distilled until you get down to that little doable goal that is risky enough to motivate you and specific enough to be useful. But then you've come a long way from that. I want to kind of lose weight. I don't feel good about myself. And you've boiled it down to that really useful and effective and actionable little step. And so that'll help you get a long ways. You'll be able to actually be more effective and knock out your goals and not just be stuck in that land of like stressed, or maybe anxious, like, how am I going to get this done? Am I getting it done? It just boils it down, makes it a lot more specific, and it'll make you be a lot more effective.
Yes. What you said reminded me of a quote from the 12-week year. It says, a vision without a plan is a pipe dream. So kind of what you're saying, if you have a general direction that you want to move this way, take that and make a good plan out of it, because otherwise it's just a dream. A vision without a goal is just a dream. Okay. So we hope that this has been helpful to you and is something that you can take and apply to your life and makes your life better. So go live intentional.
If you want to check out some of the resources that we pull from, here are some of the ones that we use today.
So the 12-week year is a book about taking your big ideas of what you want to do and making them more concrete. The whole thing that I really like from their book is how they say, forget about year goals, because a year is so long you forget, or you get down to the last 3 months and you freak out and you bust your butt trying to get everything done. And what they do is they're like, hey, actually make it 3 months and make that your goal setting period. And then every 3-month period, every quarter has a goal or 2 or 3 goals. And inside that, you take those goals and you make them down to weekly goals and into daily goals, so that your big achievements that you want to do in life, like these big rock things that matter, get daily attention. And it creates this sense of urgency. So I really love that book. It's one of my favorites that I keep on re-listening to. We will link that in the show notes. The Power of Habit is another book. Mentioned that. The Full Focus Planner goal setting page is where I pulled the SMARTer goals from, their definitions and their acronym use. So if you look up we'll have it in the show notes, but the Full Focus Planner itself is a planner that I use and I love it. I feel like I need it. Like, it's definitely worth the subscription for me. I could start doing a whole pitch on why they're valuable. We're just not going to do that. I use the Full Focus planners. I love them. And their page has lots of other resources. You can look that up. They have lots of free resources and things you can print. And like, for example, this page we're linking here about goal setting. Michael Hyatt, as an author in general, is just super awesome. He's got lots of great books that I've read. Some of them I haven't read yet, but one of the ones I really appreciate is Living Forward, which is kind of about how you take your vision for the person you want to be and how you apply that to your life. And so I love that book, and just him as an author in general. He's the one who started the Full Focus planners. And so I got a lot of resources and thoughts about this topic from him. So check him out. And then the last thing I want to recommend is the Full Focus podcast, if you will. It's called Focus on This. I think it's true when they say it is the most productive podcast on the internet. And if you want to learn more about how to use a full focus planner, or how to set goals, or just being productive, being effective, it's a super great resource. And it's not just for people that want to get stuff done. It's for people that want to have healthy lives. So they will say, hey, this is your work goal, but what about your family? And what about resting? And what about fun? And so they're going to help you have more of a balanced life, not just getting stuff done, but having a life worth living. So super recommend them. Go check their podcast out. If you thought that today's episode was helpful to you and you liked the resources we shared with you today, go check those out, because that's kind of where we drew from. And if you want to dig into this more, we recommend you go check them out. Maybe consider go subscribing to the Focus on This podcast. It is the most productive podcast on the internet. So with that, I'm going to say thanks, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.
Go live intentional.
Yeah.
Which just sounds so wrong. It sounds so wrong to say. Eventually it'll sound normal.
Yeah.
But it's
I think you're right.
It's so not English.
I know, but I think that'll actually help it be more obvious that that it is like a pun, and that is a thing.
And it will
you can see it. Yeah.
All the grammar nerds are going to freak out, which at least we're getting their attention.
Exactly. They're on tension.